welcome to my studio. Today we're going to do the beading class, and this is a technique that I've come up with teaching you how to apply the beads around the outside of the gourd piece. A lot of research and development has gone into this, and this process has taken me over a year to get it just right. So we want to make sure that each step I tell you, there is a reasoning behind that. So what may seem a little bit strange, there is a purpose. So we're going to start out with our circle pieces, and these are just circle drilled gourd pieces. And I have 4 different sizes currently in front of me. And this is a 2.5 inch, a 2 inch, a 1.5, and a 1 1/4. These little guys make great earrings. These are currently the 4 sizes we have on our web page, but also so you know, so you can drill them. If you have a circle drill at home and want to make your own, you can do that as well. If it's easier to drill them if you put the drill through the middle, and if you do that, just fill that in with quick wood and sand it out, and you're good to go. We're not going to get into the design. This is strictly a beading class today, but when you get your designs done on your gourd pieces, and I'm going to have several designs out there for you, teaching you all kinds of different pieces as far as methods as well. So what you're going to first do is apply your pattern, your design to the top of your gourd before you do anything else. And once that is done, you're going to come in and you're going to remove any wax that is left on the side of the gourd. It is very important to clean this first. We have to keep the gourd piece on the sides free of anything other than dye and acrylic paints, basic stuff like that that is not sealed. We do not want any type of seal on the side of our gourd piece. So we've cleaned that all nice and clean. Now I'm going to be working with pieces just so you can see them a little bit better that don't have the design, so it doesn't distract from anything that we are doing today. So I'm going to take back the 2 inch piece, and now that I had cleaned my design off, I had removed the wax, you seal it with your Mod Podge. So at that point in time, you would come over and I just pour it on and brush it, and I do several coats because a gourd isn't flat. You can't just circle it around and leave it. It will fall off of your gourd. So I would do at least 5 coats with a brush on, and let one each dry really good. And the last one, you want to make sure you let it dry at least 3 hours before you would get ready to do the following process, and that is the Mod Podge Dimensional Magic, and we do carry that on the Miriam Joy website. So once you've varnished it, we're going to come in and we're going to use our black acrylic paint. Now you can use whatever color of paint you want to with your piece. The reason I do most of my pieces with black is a background color and it fades into the background. So I like to use the back, so when I put the beads, that it stands out and the gourd part just fades into the background. But if you wanted to do it colors that match your piece and your beads, you can do that. Now you just want to keep the paint off of your pre-done part, and that would just wipe right off because you've got the sealer on top of it. And we're just going to do all of that guy, and then we're going to paint his back black. was one other thing I'll show you here that you could do before this, but we'll go ahead and do this first. And I'm going to let that dry for a minute, get that nice and dry. You also can use your heat tool and dry that even faster, and that is a new product that we are now selling on the website as well. And I apologize if some of them we do tell you that we do sell them, but the reason we do that is so that you know where you can buy it, because when you are working and you need an item and you don't know where to get it, it is easier just to have it. Now, on the gourd pieces, while that's drying, we're going to talk a little bit more about them. You want to make sure that it is not too thin, because we're actually going to put some pieces in here. This is a little thick, and you can even have it probably about half that width. This guy right here, probably about that thick. You wouldn't want to go much smaller than that. We try to sand these, and when I'm sanding them, I use a tabletop sander or a belt sander, and if there's a thicker part, lay that part down first, and then it'll sand it so it's a little bit more even. You want to try and keep the thickness as even as you can. Now, we know gourds aren't even, and we'll do our best to kind of put the piece of suede, and we'll talk about that in a second, around it as evenly as possible. So this guy is pretty nice and even. You also want to make sure that your sides are as even, one's not up or one's not down, so that your beads show nice and even when you're all done as well. Now, what we glue onto the sides is suede lacing. Now, this is not the real expensive stuff. This is a little bit thinner, and it's not as thick as some of the others. Now, I want to show you the difference between leather. This is leather. Now, see how thick it is? It is very hard to use. It's too thick, and we can't put a hole through it. So I don't recommend leather. Now, this is another piece of suede, and again, this is a little bit heavier dutier than what I want. And if you notice, this is a part that's going to show. I don't like the white coming through as well. Now, if you had something like that and you had to use it, you could use a little bit of black paint and paint that up if after you put it on any of it still showed. If you put the beads on it, most likely it's going to go ahead and cover that up as well. So just if it showed, just touch that up just a tad. But as you can see, this is a lot thinner. And I also found some deer lacing that were nice and pliable too. So you want something that's kind of thin and just nice and pliable so that we can work with it. Now, this guy's probably a little bit wetter, but we'll go ahead and try here. When you're putting on, you want to put it on to the back. Now, if you weren't putting the beading on and you just wanted to use it as a decoration, put it on the front of your gourd, just right around the front. Now, when we're putting the beading on, the beading is still going to stick forward from this piece. So you don't want it sticking real far over, so stick it towards the back. Now, if you have a piece, like this guy is just a little bit wider, right through this one area. So when you get to that wider part, try to bring the suede the same length around. So right here would be at the back, and we bring it forward just a little bit so that all of this front area is even. And so you don't have beads that kind of go down or sloped or anything like that. So that's how we kind of think about putting it on. Now, we're going to start, and I use tacky glue. I tried several glues with this method, including E6000, and that is too durable. We need something that gives a little bit. So all the different glues that I tried, I came back to tacky glue. So it's real important that is tacky glue, and I do carry this little handy size. When I am working with the tacky glue, I don't leave it sitting up, I leave it sitting sideways so that it runs down and I don't have that air bubble all of the time. So that's why you'll notice that my tacky glue is on the side. Now I'm going to start with the skinniest part here, and I'm going to put just a little bit of tacky glue on. And I'm going to grab my suede piece, and I'm going to stick that towards the back. And you see I'm holding it with my fingernail. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my awl and I'm going to push a hole into that. And the hole is going to be about 1/4 of an inch down. And the reason it's about 1/4 of an inch down is we're going to put in a sequin pin, because the sequin pin is 1/2 inch. And I found out that this was the best way to get a nail, and it is not a nail, it is a pin. And we tried all different types of nails. They didn't make them small enough, and we got into brads, and those were even too big. The sequin pin allows it to go in without splitting your gourd, and it's easier to do that than to nail that. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and we're going to come right back. We were talking about our sequin pins, and this is something that did a lot of research on, and we were talking about that. And these are 1/2 inch, and this is a real specialized item, so you want to make sure that you get it right. So that is another thing that we do carry. I also used a thimble, and you can go to any of your stores, but you want to use a slip-stop thimble that's got the different grooves and everything in it, because we're going to use the thimble to put the pin in, not a hammer. And this took a lot of learning, because every time I tried to hammer it in, I would bend the needle. So we talked about punching that little hole down about 1/4 of the way down, which would be about 1/2 the size of your pin. You want to make sure that your hole goes straight, that it doesn't go towards the front or towards the back. If you have to angle it a little bit, go towards the back. You do not want that pin coming through your design in the front. That's real important. So I always leave my finger there so I know where the hole is, because you're not going to be able to see it real easy, but you can feel when it goes in, and set that in there. And then you're going to take your thimble, because you have all those nice little grooves, and you're going to push that straight in. And make sure it didn't come through the back or anything like that. If your pin bends, pull it out and put a new one in. Don't try to use it or try to continue it or fix it. You want to make sure that you just pull it out. Usually I keep a little pair of pliers here, and I know I make it look easy, but I've learned and I've practiced a bit on it, so don't be afraid to keep trying it. In some gourd pieces are easier than other gourd pieces. Some are harder, some are softer. So keep on working on that. Now, we're going to take our tacky glue, and we're going to go 1/4 of the way around the gourd. You want a nice thick amount. More is better in this situation, because we need a solid thing of glue. And I keep a little rag with me, and I'll wipe it off when I need to. And I'm going to go to where my 1/4 inch is, And remember, we want to keep this as even up here as we can. And I'm going to put my finger down. And I'm going to put my hole in. And that is right in the middle of that lacing. Not to one side or the other side. So you're holding that lacing in place. Slippery little suckers, I can't grab onto them. And the reason we hold our fingernail there is so we can find that hole. If you can't find that hole, do it again. I'm not sure I'm finding that hole. There. I think we're started. Nope, I'm not finding that, so I'm going to do it again. Just right in front of that fingernail, and hopefully you have better fingernails than I do. And we're going to stick that pin in. Okay, come on. Quit being a little booger here. There it is. I'm trying too far back. And again, just take that and push that right in. Make sure, again, like we talked about, don't come through that front. You'd rather go through that back. If I had a thin gourd and I did come through the back, I have just covered that up with glue. Cut off the pin a little bit and cover that up if you need to. Now this part gets wider, so I'm going another 1/4 of the way down. I'm keeping this part consistent on top, so that my beading is all even on top. I'm going to take that again, poke a hole, try to watch exactly where I'm putting it. This is a harder gourd that I'm working with. I didn't know that thimbles came in different sizes. Guess she shows you how much I work with thimbles. And I thought as small as fingers as I had, I would use a smaller one, but I found out that I like the larger thimble. So that's a piece of information I learned that I can pass down. If you get to that very part and you can't get it in with your thimble, you can hit that with a little bit with a hammer. I have one of the small jewelry hammers, but the thimble is so much easier. It keeps it from being bent. I can't tell you how many bent nails and needles of all kinds I tried. Again, we're about a 1/4 of the way again. Put another hole right there, keeping the suede piece as even on the gourd as we possibly can. Trying to pick up these pins without any fingernails is fun. Get it in that hole. And you really do, the other trick is the hole. If you don't have that hole there, it's going to make your life miserable. Trust me. So it is real important to get an awl. This I'm working with is actually a clay tool, so there's all kinds of things, and if not, like Blue Whale or somebody like that carries the awls. And again, set that on the side. And this part is a little bit messier. Now, we're going to come up to the piece right there, and I am going to bump up against it so that hole that I put on is right in front of the other one. It's not on top of it because you've got stuff there, but it's going to be right next to it. I'm going to bump right up to it. So we're going to get that in there and push that in. Now this guy came up a little bit over here, so I'm going to stick him back down. You must touch the leather. It has to touch, because if you go to put the beading and string through there and there's nothing for it to hold on, it is not going to work. So it has to touch. And I use little tiny scissors to trim with, and it's better to start with too much first and just trim a little bit more until they are laying down next to each other than it is to cut and have any type of gap at all. So I'm going to take the rest of my pins, and that was really good. We didn't bend any or anything, but like I said, practice, 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 and that will really help you get that down. Now, the next step I tell you is going to seem a little bit ridiculous, but it is one of the most important steps in this necklace part of gluing the beads on. It kind of makes a seal in the front and the back, and it's what holds your string onto your beads. It forms a seal. So do not overlook this step, and make sure that you use an excessive amount of glue. It's better to have too much glue than not enough. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the glue, we're still using tacky glue, and we're going to form a seal in the back of this all the way around, up, bumping up between the leather, the suede piece, and the gourd. And make sure that you have a solid amount, that you're not missing any area. Now we're going to flip it, and we're going to do the same thing to the front. We're going to go in between that. You can see on this part it's a little bit easier because in the part in the back it's kind of flat up against the gourd. But between here and here you've got to have that seal. So you're creating that seal. So we're going to put our glue lid back on, and we should be done with the glue. Now this is a little bit messy. I'm going to get my little bit of a wet cloth here. And a lot of times I'll do this in the kitchen sink. And I take both of my fingers and do it at the same time. So I am wiping it off. We're forming that bond, and see how you have that nice glue between there. And don't worry about this, this is going to dry clear. You do want to get the glue off your design in the front. Make sure it is solid. Make sure there is all the white is showing. Make sure if there's any that's not white, you go back and add more glue. And you can take this off of your suede piece. It's going to dry clear, so it's not going to matter. Now, in this part, I left out one step, and I'll go back and show you that in just a second. On our covering our back, there's a couple things we can do with our back. We can either repaint this when we get done, and we'll talk about that when we get to that area. But what we're going to do is let this set aside until it is completely dry. All of this should be nice and dry. This is one I've done previously so that you can see it, and that you see that all that black is, or excuse me, white is gone, and it is nice and dry. And I would, depends on where you live too, how long it takes it to dry. It's going to take you at least an hour or more. You would rather have it really, really dry than not dry enough, because again, this is what is going to hold our beading on. So once that's dry, we're going to come back and we're going to use sinew, I probably pronounced that wrong, to do our beading. And there's a couple of reasons that we're going to use this. And one of the reasons is it is very, very strong, and it has a wax coating on it so it doesn't slide and it stays in place. Now we want to use one that we can pull apart and I'm going to pull it into 2 pieces, and I'm going to stretch it out so I probably have a 3-foot piece of it, and pull it in half, and you will end up with one long strand to do your piece with. And we want to make sure that it is long enough. And I'm going to use an embroidery needle. I want one that's big enough with the hole that I can get my sinew into, but I also want to make sure that it's strong enough that I can push it through my gourd. So we're going to thread that. Don't try to use a beading needle or anything like that. And I think the piece that I'm going to use today may be a little bit short, but I want to show you what would happen if we did have a piece that was too short anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our knot, and I'm just going to go through this several times. Just go back and forth, back and forth. So I get a nice knot on this. Okay, and leave 4 inches out here for us to be able to tie off at the end of our, when we're all done with our beadings, to tie it off. Now when you're beading, there's all kinds of wonderful different beads that you can use depending on the color of your design, what color you think would set it off. So there's black that's really nice, but all kinds of different beading. I do not recommend going as small as the seed beads. There is the little bead that's a little bit bigger up than that, and I do use that, but the seed bead is too small for how we're looping it back and forth, and it doesn't want to stay. So don't go real small, stay with a little bit bigger beads. But there's all kinds of fun ones out there that you can use. Today I'm going to be using an 8mm silver bead. And the beads that I am going to be using have a wider hole in them, and that's another thing that you want to make sure that the bead that you are using is very easy to get your needle through a couple of times with your thread. You don't want one that is not, so we want to make sure that that hole is big enough when you're judging on what type of bead you want to use. Now we're going to start, and I don't want you to start where you have a pin in your into your gourd circle, and we're going to push this through, and what we're actually doing is going between the suede piece and the gourd itself, right in between those 2 links. So you're not actually going through the suede piece, you're going underneath it, and that's what the glue formed, is that nice little part there. So we're going to pull this, and what you want to do when you're pulling is you want to pull it firm, but don't pull too tight because you will break that glue bond. So you want to make sure it's secure but not pull it tight. Now when we start this, all of our beading is done on this side of the suede piece that we glued on, but we have to go underneath it to secure it. That is how we secure it. So the first one we start with is going to be 2 beads, and we're going to put those beads on. So see, now you are sitting on top of that lacing, and you want to see where that would line up, and you're going to go back underneath that lacing right where your bead is, and you're going to pull that. Pull this back one's going to get in your way once in a while, and just keep pulling that little tail out if it gets caught up in there. So we're going to pull that not too tight but firm, And then while we're on this side, we come back and we're going halfway underneath that, so you're coming in between those two beads. So pull that through. Again, don't pull that too hard, and you're going to go through your first bead and you're going to add another one. So lay it down, see where it lines up, push underneath that suede piece, go through it, and on the back, go through half of that again, pull it. We're going to go through the first bead, so you're always going through one bead and adding the next bead. And then once you have that on, underneath where that lines up, and then through the back, and to hold that in place, you go back that bead, and you'll see when you go back in here, it's where you've pushed your other hole, so it kind of should go in there nice and even. And when you start to do this right, you see your stitches, and they will all line up. You see we've got 3 little stitches. You should not be missing any of them in the back, so that you know that you're doing it right. And then we go through the front. So what you're basically doing is a stitch here and a stitch back here and a stitch forward here and a stitch. So you've got all on one side or the other. You're not looping anything across. If your string is going across, you are doing it wrong. So we're going to add our other bead. And once you get this, this is going to go a lot faster than you think that it will. Now, if you hit a pin, either go in front of it or behind it, depending on where you're at. But the pin doesn't take up too much of the room, so don't worry about it. And again, we're going in that back hole, and it's already a hole you've made. Now this is why gluing it is so important, because if you hadn't glued this and your string is pulling through, that is the reason why. So if you were doing this, make sure you're not pulling your string very hard. You want it just nice and firm. And if they're coming out, then you need to glue better. And I will show you, we'll pull one through so that you can see in a bit when one is stripped. And I will show you a way you can fix it if you just have like an area. Keep pulling that tail guy out of there. So, because it does happen where you have one where it does get stripped. And we'll show you how to pin that back on. So through the bead, add one on, through the front of the lacing, the leather or the suede lacing, so through the front to the back, and then go back one bead. So your leather, again, your stitching, see how all of our stitches are there. And make sure that when you're doing this, you are not getting into your gourd. Sometimes if you're working and your pieces are, you'll be getting into the gourd piece. You don't want to get into the gourd. You're just making it harder on yourself when you do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull this one really firm and try to strip this so you can see what happens when you strip one. And I've done a good job of gluing it so it doesn't want to strip. Well, let's keep working here. See if I can get one a little bit further down here to strip, or have one that does, but I'll make sure that I show you how to do that. That means we just did a great job of gluing it. And like I said, if that is coming through, then you didn't glue it well enough. And that's why that tacky glue is so important, and the other glues just don't work the same. So stitch back up through the beads, go through the last one, add a bead, go through the front of the suede lacing to the back, make a stitch in the back up to that first bead. So back one bead, it's always one bead. Try and keep this little tail out of there. He's going to come in later. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm going to work on this a little bit. Instead of keep having you follow here, I'm going to try and also get one stripped for you here. So we're going to come back in just a minute and I'll be a little bit farther along. Okay, I'm going to show you what happens when one strips, and I had to really work at this to get this to strip, and that's when the seal is broken between the suede piece and the gourd. So we're really going to, you put it through like normal, and when you put it back, hopefully I can get this to do this, it's going to come undone. And it just pops out like that, so that you know that you broke your seal. So what we're going to do to fix that, instead of you having to glue it and wait the entire time, is push your needle through right in front of the gourd piece where you want that to go through, so you can see where to put a little pin. So we're going to come back in and fix that with a little sequin pin. So we want to make sure that the pin is right here, so that this goes around it. The pin is holding it securely, and then you can put that stitch in to hold it into place. So we know that's there, so we're going to push our hole down. We're going to put our sequin pin in. Now this should only be for a fix. This shouldn't be where it's securing all the time. If it is, stop and re-glue. But once in a while, for some reason, we didn't get thick enough glue there. And that's why it's so much better to use way more glue than way less. So now we're going to push that behind there. And we've got our pin in place so that that will not strip. And again, remember to pull it firm but not too tight. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you, if you were running out of your thread here, or your sinew was getting really, really low, and you knew that you were going to need a new piece before you got to the end. Let's say you had 4 inches left here. Don't go any less than your 4 inches. Okay? So if you ever get in this situation, you'll know how to handle it as well. Try to cut your piece big enough that you do not have to deal with this. And like I said, I usually cut mine about 1 yard, and I usually have way too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull that all the way out and leave it. We're going to start our next piece, and we're going to get it threaded. And this is also how we're going to end it as well. I have a piece running around over here. It may be A little bit rougher shape than I thought it was. Okay, there we go. We got it threaded. This is a raffia piece. No wonder it was a little bit of a piece. I wondered why it felt so funny. I've been working with raffia in my studio as well. So we'll cut a new piece here. Now remember, this is bigger than we want, and we're going to divide it. Then you should have that spare piece. That was too funny. I knew it didn't look right. I'll set that other one aside for my next one. I can pick up the needle and get it threaded. That was just too funny. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with that piece. Thread our needle. Okay. And what we're going to do is the same thing we did when we started this. Give you about 4 inches. Run that through that loop several times to give you a bigger tie there. Alright. Now, we left this guy off over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to pretend like we looped him, so we would put this one on this side of the bead. We're going to pull this all the way down. We got to our little knot, and we're going to tie these. And we're going to do, now remember, you don't want to strip your suede again. I'm going to do about 3 knots in that just to hold that nice and secure. And then we're going to get rid of those tails in just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and get this guy a couple beads up. So run him through that first guy again. Add a bead. I just want to get them away from those so we can put those in nice and neat and clean. And I hope I don't have that guy too stripped, because I kind of stripped that whole area trying to get that to go through on the last one. Okay, so we'll just keep working forward, but we're going to get rid of these tails, so we don't have to fight them, and so we get them nice and neat and tucked away. So remember, we left these longer. The reason you leave them longer is so that you can work with them. So I'm going to cut them both the same length so I can pick them up with the needle together. And get this needle threaded. Okay, and what we're going to do is pick either the left or the right, either one of those is fine, that you came up through, and push it back down to the front of that, to the front. Now see how that cleans that up? And then we're going to go through the front, and we're going to go straight up and into the beads. And I'm just going to stick that needle in, and I lost my strings here, till it pops out. It'll pop out about the 3rd or the 4th one, whatever, it doesn't matter. If I can get it to pop out. Okay. And in, get this guy. I may have to pull him out to get him threaded again. We'll see here. And sometimes if I'm having a hard time threading him, I'll just put one through at a time and pull the other one out. And that's okay too, just to run them through one at a time instead of trying to get them both together. Okay, I got them both there. And that's why keep that longer, so that you don't have a hard time doing that. And we're just going to stick it through, back through those, hide that tail, and trim it. Trim it that real nice and tight up against that bead so that it won't show. And then we're just going to continue working here. So I'm going to go ahead and finish beading that, and I will join you when we're almost to the end over here. Okay, we're getting near the end of it, and this doesn't really take a long time. Once you get comfortable with the process, it's going to take less and less time. And when you're getting near the end, you might want to see, let's see if 2 beads will fit in here. I think we have just enough room for 2 beads to fit in there. So we're going to put this one in. Now, if you didn't, I know there's still a large space there, and we could only get the 1 bead in. Put that in. Pull your your needle through, and kind of pull everything, and everything will kind of shift, and it will spread out and make it nice and even. So don't worry about it if you have a little bit more than a bead space, but not 2 beads. It really does. It's amazing how it'll just kind of shift. Just do it like here, only move it up to the next bead and just kind of shift it all over. But we have enough room here that we think we can get 1 more in. Okay, so through the back. Don't get in the gourd part. Through the back. Get our last bead in, and again, the beads that I'm working with today are 8mm, but it doesn't matter. I just wouldn't go as small as the seed beads. Now see how that fit in there perfectly. So we're going to go through this one, out the back. We still need to attach him, so we're still going to go up the back. Alright, now we've gone through the back. Now we're going to come up through him, and we're going to go through like this guy was added on. So you're going through 2 beads, and you're going to go through that to the back, and then up the back part. Now, before we tie this off, I want to tell you, if your beading was kind of loose and not as tight around as you wanted to, you could take and go through the beads and go all the way around and tighten it. Just by all the way around, I mean just come back in here and go through them, and you're going to have to pop out. Like if we popped out here, then we'd pull it out and then we'd pop it back in the same area and go all the way around until you came back over here, and then you could tighten it so it was even tighter so that it was nice and tight, not loose. Now, we're done. We're to the back. You should end it so you have just 1 space like you did in the other one. And we're going to tie our knot 3 times again. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to cut it the same length as the shortest one. And remember, that's why we want to leave those longer, so that makes this process easier to get back through our beads. So kind of thread them together. And if you can't get both of them, do them one at a time. That's okay. We talked about that. If you can't get them both in your needle at the same time. And so we're going to pick a side, and we're going to go back up it. It doesn't matter, either side of that knot. And another reason I really like these thimbles is because you can grab a hold here, and you can pull, and it helps pull that needle out as well. Now pull that, and then we're going to stick it into the beads and just pull that out. So we've tucked our tail in, and we're just going to trim that tail right off. And see how great that does it. And remember, we're talking about the color of the black. See how that just kind of fades in to the background so it doesn't show. And by putting your strap, your suede lacing down here, your beads are on top, but they're not too much above. The thinner your gourd, the more your beads are going to stick out on top. On this side, they're a little bit more up, and that was where our gourd piece was just a little bit thinner, and that's why we want to try and get that as even as we can, so that this is pretty even all the way around. But when you wear it, it really doesn't show up that much at all. You just see the beads around it and how elegant it really looks, and just makes the piece stand out. But now, when you know you've done it all right, because you can see the lacing just going in and out, in and out, in and out, all the way around. Now, there's a couple things we can do to finish this off. If this is smooth enough for you, you can, what I do is I come in here and I paint this all black, including my sinew thread, so that it's all black and nice and neat. But I suggest covering it because it can be a little bit, that's not too bad, a little bit rough. If you don't have one that's this sanded, it's going to be even rougher. And what you can do is take your piece and try to remember this before you start to glue everything on, or another piece exact same size, and put it on a piece of leather or material or anything like that. Material is fine, anything soft. This is actually pig's leather, and the reason I like to use it is because it's a little bit stretchy, so I can pull it out if I need to get it to fit, and it's nice and soft. So we're going to take this now and we're going to cut this all the way around. Try to do a nice even job as you can. And again, this is a thinner leather, not a real thick leather like a cowhide or anything. And you can do it out of material. Anything like that. Even felt would be fine as well. I just like the way this looks. And see how we've got that real nice look on the back. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our tacky glue again. And I'm going to make sure that I have it on all of the edges. Especially up on the strings. And all in here. Just to complete it. Make sure you don't have any on your hand when you touch your leather. And we're going to set that down, and you want to cover up all of those edges. And this is that part where I was telling you I like this because this stretches. So I can stretch it and then just pick up any of that glue that pops out with your finger. Try not to touch your leather with the glue on it. And then you get this nice clean look, and nobody can see the sewing or anything on the back. And I just put my hand down with the glue on it. You get this nice clean look though, and how much nicer that is. And then it's soft to wear or anything like that. So once we've got that and that is dry, we're going to decide which is your top part on your necklace. You want to look at your pattern and decide where you want it to hang. And like on this piece, I would want it to hang right about there. Now, if your gourd is thick enough and you have some parts that's not where the suede is, you can put it in that, but if not, you're going to have to go through the suede again. So we're just going to take our awl and we're going to stick it right in the middle, and it doesn't have to be the middle of the suede, just the middle of the piece there. And I'm going to use a screw eye, and I want the smallest ones I can find, and these are 7/16, and they're pretty small. And this is another item that is a little bit harder to find, so we do have these available on the Miriam Joy website. And I'm going to simply start to put it into the hole and twist it into the gourd piece. You don't want these big because you don't want them to split your piece again. And we're going to work this all the way down. And you want to make sure, because you do have your beads up front, that you lay it flat so your beads can go back and it's not sticking out. Because if you have it this way, it's going to make your bead pop forward, and you don't want to do that. So we're going to lay that flat just like that right there. And then we're going to take our necklace piece, and I'm going to grab a necklace. And you can use whatever type of necklace you want. It doesn't have to be the kind I am using. And we're going to take one jump ring. And we're going to open this jump ring up. And I find it easier if I'm working with two tools. Put it through your necklace and then put it onto your pendant. Now we've got to get this closed back up. And you want to make sure that you have it squished nice and tight. You do not want to use too soft of a jump ring. You want to make sure that your jump ring does not bend too easily so that it comes undone. Now, because this is laying that way, your jump ring will go the other direction, which will make your necklace hang straight off and going the right direction. Do earrings, you do them just the same. Put the jump ring on and then just put them right onto your earring wire, and it's done exactly the same way. So that is how we bead our jewelry pieces. With a little bit of practice, it's something that becomes very easy, and you'll be able to do fairly quickly. So just practice a little bit, especially like pushing the pins in and everything like that. If you have any questions about the process, please email me at art@miriamjoy.com. But we're making little kits for you that are going to come in different colors of beads and different sizes, so that you have everything in one little handy packet and don't have to go out and buy everything individually, which also makes it a lot more costly when you don't need all of that. It makes it a little bit more affordable, as well as a lot more handy than trying to run around all over town and find your different items as well. There are also going to be some videos on how to do the different wax designs. Now, we do ask, since this is a paid video, we are giving you a video code, and you can use that code as many times to watch your video and stop it and continue it, so you don't have it just one time. You can go back and use that as many times. But I ask you as a courtesy, since I'm a professional artist and this is my living, that you do not hand that code out to others, that you encourage them to buy their own code, because this is something that we are trying to charge a little bit on, so that we can bring you more great items like this, because we give you so many free videos as well. There's a lot of time and development went into this process. If you need any of the products, those are found on my website at miriamjoy.com, and at the end of this video there'll also be some information there as well. I hope you really enjoy this, and I can't wait to see what everybody comes up with and how wonderful their jewelry is. Thank you, and God bless.